There's a difference between a boy and a man. And his level of immaturity will show you that difference. And unfortunately, many of you have seen it firsthand with having to deal with a lot of immature men. Grown boys trying to present themselves as men, but having yet developed properly. All right. And listen, I don't want to make this video about bashing men in any kind of way, because I want to make clear that an immature man does not mean a bad man. All right. It just basically means an undeveloped man, a man who still needs to grow up in certain kind of ways, especially when we're talking about the context of being able to have a relationship with him. So it's important that you understand the signs of immaturity, because those signs are telling you he needs to figure some things out. So let's get to it. The first sign he's too immature for you is that he cannot take care of himself. Here's something that's very important to understand. There are people out there who will talk about a woman building with a man, supporting him, being there with him through the grind and all these things. And I say to all of that, blah, blah, blah. Listen, and I don't want to dismiss the fact that there have been people who have joined the man on the journey upward and have been able to succeed with it and seen an amazing relationship come out of it. However, there are way more stories of that method blowing up in a woman's face, of a woman being drained and damaged because of that situation. And what you have to understand is, when a man is in the position that he cannot take care of himself, is he choosing you out of love or out of a desire for help? All right? Let me say that again. Is he choosing you out of love or a desire to get help? And the key thing that will show you which one of those things it is, love or help, is he pouring into you? So, if you are going to make an exception of dealing with a man who has yet been able to take care of himself. Let's say he's not financially stable yet. Let's say he's living at his mother's house. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. And you're like, you know what? I love him. I want to be there for him. I want to help him get to a better place. The only reason, in my opinion, you should make that exception is that he shows a willingness to essentially compensate for what he lacks. So like, okay, you're not financially stable, but he shows an effort to be the man who can help you and take other burdens off your back. Maybe it's help run some errands for you. Maybe it's help fix some things around the house. He's showing himself to be useful in his life, even though he does not have all that other stuff together yet. But please also make sure there has to be an understanding that he still needs to work on getting himself together. Doing those other things are great, but they're not a replacement for getting himself in order to where, with push come to shove, he could take care of himself. But without that, if he just comes into a relationship and pretty much becomes a taker, then that's a man who's just looking for help. He's just looking to use you. And what you as a woman, I have to say this, what you as a woman have to be mindful of is, why are you accepting a man in that position? Is it truly because you love him, or is it because you want to feel needed and valued? All right? Because if you're choosing that man out of a position of wanting to feel needed or valued, or subconsciously or consciously wanting to have more control in the relationship, this is a very unhealthy thing. And it's that kind of dynamic that leads to women ending up with narcissists, or at least contributes to it. All right? But I'll leave that for a different video. To get back to the overall point at hand, he needs to be able to handle himself. Now, again, I also want to stress, it's not that the man has to be rich. He just has to be able to take care of his own things, his own bills. For me, and just so you know, I have a channel for men now, and I'm going to be telling them about, like, as a man, I want to see more men. I think men living on their own is a great thing, at least for a little while, because it helps them learn how to handle themselves, how to pay their bills and all these things. But I understand not every situation will afford that man that opportunity right away. And sometimes it might be best for that man to live at home while he saves up and things of that nature. Which is why, let me mention real quick the whole dynamic of living with his mother or his parents. Let me just say this. I know in society, at least in Western society, we have this perception of that's a huge red flag if this man is living at home with his mother. And I'm not saying that in many cases it isn't a red flag. What I will say is take a deeper dive and find out what is the actual dynamic here. Because there's a difference between a man living at home with his mother and basically being taken care of by his mother or his parents versus the man who is staying there strategically and stacking up his money. The man who still, or maybe he is helping his mother out at that time, but knows how to have boundaries with his mother to where she doesn't run his relationships. There are some exceptions to the rule of a man living at home that he still is a good candidate and still mature enough to enter into a relationship. So you want to take a look at that. But again, for the most part, if he is unable to take care of himself, he's too immature. He's not ready. And again, doesn't make him a bad guy. It just means not yet. Not yet. All right. So now the second sign that he's too immature for you is that he doesn't have his priorities in order. So what do I mean here? Sometimes a man might be taking care of himself. Well, let's start with the guy who's not taking care of himself. Here's another exception or another thing you have to look at. He's unable to take care of himself, but what is he doing to get out of that position? What is he doing to build himself up? And this is where you're going to start to be able to evaluate, does he have his priorities in order? Is he over here broke, don't have any money, but he spends more time playing video games than he does trying to get a job? Is he being picky about where he needs to go work and being accepting of staying broke and financially unstable rather than sucking it up and doing what needs to be done to start putting money in his pocket and put himself in a better position? These are just some small examples of what shows you or how you can see that this man does not have his priorities in order. Now, let's just say he has his stuff together in the sense of he can take care of himself. But again, what is he doing to evolve? What is he doing to be better? What is he doing that's going to position him to be a good partner to you and hopefully at some point a good husband? All right. Does he have his priorities in order when it comes to his own personal growth? As well as understanding how to balance life. Now, I'm going to say that because that's a personal conviction of mine, at least an issue that I once had. I was a man for many years where I could easily take care of myself. That was not a problem. And yes, I was going to say maybe you can't say it's priorities, but I'm going to call it priorities. I did not have my priorities in order in the sense that I did not have proper work-life balance, which would have not allowed me to be as good of a partner as I would need to be for someone. All right. So that's why it's important that you understand it's not just about him having money and being able to take care of certain things. Does he have proper structure in his life? All right. And listen, again, I have to keep repeating it. It didn't make me a bad guy. It doesn't make him a bad guy. But if you get with him when he does not have that balance, when he does not have those priorities properly in place, then you're going to be in a position where you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice quality time. You have to sacrifice the attention you might want from him. You have to sacrifice maybe your ability to even build a family together because he's like, well, I can't do it now. There's too much going on. And if you are going to be very negatively impacted by this, then this says to you, it is not time. Now, yes, one could argue, is this really about maturity or not? When we look at maturity as an evolving of an individual, developing, becoming more wise, and yes, you can argue this is still a level of maturity that needs to be achieved when it comes to having a healthy and successful relationship. So take a look at how he is handling and managing his life. And does he have it together? And yes, this is one of those things where you would have a talk with him about it. I think all of these things, it's about always discussing it, because sometimes he may not understand how he's dropping the ball in certain areas. And you, if there's a genuine desire to be together, you simply addressing the issue may allow him to be like, oh, you know what? I did not understand how this was a problem, because when you're single, you don't realize how this will impact somebody. But now that someone else is in the picture, it might be like, oh, okay, now that you mention it, all right, let me get this in order. So be willing to talk about it, because it's a fixable thing. But if he's unwilling or unable, then yeah, it ain't time yet. All right, so let's keep this rolling. The third sign that he's too immature for you is that he is guided by his emotions. So essentially what I'm saying here is a man who has not learned how to properly manage his emotions is going to be a very unstable man, all right? And someone who is going to struggle with how to properly handle situations in a relationship, as well as how to be a good leader when necessary in the relationship. It's not that I want to make emotions this completely bad thing, right? But as a man, he's got to be able to take a step back and process and think things through. People who are too emotionally reactive end up doing things that they regret, end up making bad decisions. I hate to say it, but they can end up becoming very abusive, whether that be verbally abusive, and sometimes it can cross the line of being physically abusive, because it all stems from they have not learned how to properly manage their emotions, and or they have not healed from the past. And so now they are very easily triggered. They're holding on to a lot of negative energy. All these things create a lot of problems. So when you are evaluating this man and his level of maturity, you want to see, does he think things through? Is he very reactive, or is he mindful and aware of his actions? That's the other thing. When someone is so guided by their emotions, it is very possible for that person to become very reckless in a lot of different ways, in the way that they move, and hell, even engaging in very inappropriate behavior. I mean, it can just go in a lot of different negative directions. So you want to make sure that discussion is had, but let's also talk again about this healing thing. I think it's important to have a discussion with a man about, has he healed from his past? Now, let me say this. This is about the men, but if you want to effectively have a man be open to healing, if that's what he needs to do, then you want to be someone that's healed themselves, all right, who's embraced your own journey. So I think it's important to make sure, and for your own good, because if you haven't healed, it's very easy for you to entertain the wrong man because of that issue and what hasn't been resolved within you, all right? But shifting it back to him, he's got to be, if he has not healed, the problem is not if he hasn't, the problem is going to be if he's unwilling to do anything about it, all right? Like, I have met women as a man where they have had issues, and I'll never hold your issues against you. But if you are not willing to take certain steps, if you are unwilling to acknowledge the issues for what they are, then that is when I cannot move forward, because now I know we're going to have more problems arise because of this. And you are unwilling to do the work now to fix it. And if you can't do the work now, when we're in a good place, or when we're still getting to know each other, all right, if you don't want this enough to go face these issues, you ain't going to do it once we're in the relationship, or you're less likely to do it, all right? Because now people get comfortable. They figure, well, you knew I had these problems and you took me as I am. Why are you trying to change me now? There's going to be a lot more resistance. So we want to nip it in the bud as quickly as possible. So, not having mastered his emotions or learned how to manage them, and not having healed are definitely signs that he still needs to do some maturing. All right, now the fourth sign he is too immature for you is that he doesn't take any accountability. So kind of piggybacking off the last point, everybody, of course, has to learn how to own up to their mistakes and their issues. But we're talking about men. So if he does not show a willingness to take accountability, this cannot be ignored and overlooked, because you don't want to find yourself in a relationship or in a marriage with a man who never sees the wrong that he's doing, who never acknowledges his part of the problem, and therefore never looks to improve on those things. All right. You don't want to be with someone who's always deflecting and making it about everybody else. Every problem he has, he's blaming other people. No one who has truly matured lives a life of always pointing the finger everywhere else but themselves. All right? And as a man, he has to be willing to look at himself in the mirror and see where he can be better. And so it's one of those things where you don't want to just wait for when you two have an issue together to see how he handles it. No, he needs to be a man who takes accountability in all areas of his life. So if he's at a job and all he does is complain and make it about everybody else and everything else, but never what he could do better, problem. If you see him with his friends and family and he does the same thing, problem. Do not be fooled or let yourself think, well, he took some accountability with me, but he doesn't do it with other people, so I guess I'll let it slide because at least he doesn't do that with me. Listen, if he's not consistent with it, it's still going to be an issue at some point in your relationship. So make sure that is properly addressed and that he understands what he needs to do in order for you two to move together into a relationship. All right. So before I get to number 5, real quick, people are always asking me for coaching. They're always asking if I can answer their questions. They're very specific personal questions. And I would love to be able to get to everybody, but I'm so overwhelmed with the amount of requests coming my way. So what I've done is I've set up a special coaching program just for you to join, where you're going to learn a plethora of things, tapping into your feminine energy, meeting relationship-minded quality men, healing, you name it, it's in this program, as well as live sessions with me so that you can get your questions answered, all right? So take advantage, join the program, go to receivingmyblessings.com or click the link below in the comment section or in the description. The number 5, the 5th sign that he's too immature, is that everything has to be his way. Essentially, he's a spoiled brat. Like, let's call it what it is. This man, and listen, because I feel the need to say this. I think a man does need to determine in his life what he wants, what he's willing to accept, and be confident about that, right? But I don't believe in simply a my way or the highway in the sense that there's no flexibility with it. But here's the thing. I'm less concerned about the man who says, listen, this is the way things got to be if you're going to be with me. And if you don't like it, then we just move forward and we go our separate ways and that's it. He has every right to do that. It's the guy who will throw tantrums when you don't give him his way. It's the guy who will guilt you into giving him his way. It's the guy who will shame you and be nasty and all these negative things and manipulate you to get his way. This is a man who is not evolved. This is an immature man. This is a toxic man. That's the problem, all right? Because at least with the other guy, all right, y'all not on the same page, you don't want the same things, it is what it is. But with this guy, he's not just accepting that, he's trying to force you into his way. You cannot tolerate that kind of behavior. You've got to call it out and put your foot down and say, no, this is unacceptable. And yes, in relationships, we do have to accept that there's a level of compromise we both have to embrace if we're going to make this work. But I do think that compromise is about finding a happy medium. It's about finding that place where we can come together. Maybe we're giving up a little thing here and there, but we're still happy with the end result. If we come to conclusions where one is not happy with the end result, we're going to have things boil over into other aspects of the relationship and linger and cause more problems, because now people feel like they're being cheated. People feel like they're being devalued. People feel like they're being disrespected. That will lead to more and more problems. So if he is a spoiled brat, nah, he's too immature and he still needs to grow up. All right, so now the sixth sign he's too immature, and this one is near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to explain why, is when he's very passive aggressive. All right? So this is near and dear to my heart because I don't like passive aggressiveness at all. All right? And to me, say it with your chest. All right? Don't try to backhand, insult, or act like everything's cool when it's not, and have your little attitude, but you're trying to talk like you're all calm. Don't do that. Let me know how you're feeling. All right. Of course, we still need to speak to each other respectfully, but don't play that game. And I think that passive aggressiveness from a man it's a really big sign of immaturity, because it's kind of this mental game he's playing. Rather than just being upfront, real, and transparent with you about what his concerns are, what his issues are. Some men getting into this tit for tat type of thing because they're upset about stuff. Like, that's just unhealthy. And it can become very childish. All right. And that has no place in a relationship. Two people have to establish proper, healthy communication when it comes to any kind of disconnect, issues in our relationship, and problematic areas that need to be addressed. Okay. So ultimately, again, I'm always for have a talk about it the first time you see it. And if he's willing to correct it, cool. If not, no. He still needs to grow up in this area. All right, moving things along. The seventh sign he's too immature for you. He is unwilling to have serious conversations. All right. Now, there's a guy who's coming to mind right now. And I know that he's a good guy. He doesn't like conflict. He does not like the stress of the disagreement and having to address deeper issues. And though he's a great guy, it's still immaturity. It's still an issue, because you can't have a successful, amazing, fulfilling relationship if you cannot have serious discussions. And you've got to pay attention, because a lot of men, a good amount of men, will, when they fit this label, they'll do various things to avoid these conversations. They may dance around the topic. They may come up with various excuses. They may find ways to be busy, find a way to drag it out to where you forget about it or you let it go. And now he can just, act like, okay, we're past it. All right. And so he finds ways to avoid it, but it's really still lingering in the relationship, because you as a woman, you never had your questions answered. You never gained the clarity that you needed. You didn't get the resolution you were seeking. And though some women will continue in the relationship with the man, they continue harboring this resentment because these things are not resolved. And so there's nothing to gain by accepting this type of behavior. It's going to rob you of your peace and your sanity. All right. It's going to affect your mental, emotional, and yes, your physical health when you're dealing with a man who's unwilling to talk about these things. Because what also happens to you as a woman is now you're stuck essentially having to suppress how you feel, and that is very unhealthy. And you're not allowed to get things off your chest as far as he's not giving you that opportunity. Now, let me just throw this in there. Don't ever let someone dictate to you the ability to get something off your chest. If you need to get something off your chest and they don't want to have a verbal conversation, I'm going to always tell you to write a letter, because that's for you. You need that release. I do not want you holding on to that stuff and it creating a bigger problem within yourself. So he doesn't get to make that decision of whether you can speak on it or not. But if you see that he's not honoring you in the way that allows you to have a deeper discussion about these things, then yes, he is just too immature, or he's simply not serious enough to be in a relationship with you. And that's a man you gotta let go of ASAP. Because let me tell you this, there is no relationship, no marriage that can survive without proper communication. Plain and simple, end of story. All right, so we are on, I think this is the 8th sign, all right, that a man is too immature for you. And that is, he doesn't take guidance. Now, I definitely need to make sure I clarify here. I believe personally in a man being head of household, leading in a relationship. And I believe in this not from the perspective of a woman allowing a man to be his dictator, or a woman being unable to provide leadership. I think it's about the structure that's going to work best for most people in the long run. It's about taking that burden off that woman and showing her that she has a man that she can trust and that she can rely on, that's looking out for the best interest of both parties involved, of everyone involved, the entire family involved. All right. So I believe it's about leading with love, and it's about what's going to pour into each other the right things to have successful relationships. However, a good leader can still take correction. A good leader can still take input from others and gain other perspective. A wise man does this, all right? A foolish man thinks he knows it all. A foolish man will always want to believe he came up with the idea himself rather than give credit to others giving them the idea. Like, I've literally seen husbands and men in general where you could tell, let's say you're like, hey, you should go do this to your car, right? And he'll be like, nah, boom, boom, boom. And then next week, he'll say, yeah, I decided to do this with my car. It's the same thing that you suggested to him, but he wants to act like he came up with the idea because he wants to feel like it's him. It's always him. Like, it can't be someone else's thing. And that's immaturity. That's insecurity. That's a problem. All right. So I believe that a good, wise, mature man listens to what his partner has to say. Even if the final decision that he makes is not in line with what she suggested, because it won't always happen that way. That's fine. I think it's important, though, that he at least considers her input in it. And it's not even just about considering your input and being able to take any additional guidance from you. It's also being able to take guidance in a general sense. Any man who feels like he cannot take correction from whether it be other men or other forms of authority, whatever, that's a problem. That is a problem. So you want to evaluate how he is in a general sense, but also, is he willing to take that information from you as well and implement things that's going to make him and the relationship better? And now number 9, which now that I think about it, I should have probably made it number 1, because I think you guys are going to really jump out your chair for this one. and the 9th sign, he's too immature for you, is that he constantly craves the attention of other women. All right. So here's the thing, and I want to be very honest here. You know, I believe in masculine and feminine energy. And I do believe that a very masculine man enjoys femininity and sometimes wants to be around it, okay? But I think a wise man understands that he cannot allow a desire for feminine energy to now interfere with his relationship. And let me explain, because I think some of you, I may have lost you a little bit here. Here's the thing, because you might be saying, well, if his partner is providing that feminine energy, what's the problem? What I mean by that is, all right, you could have a man where, let's say he's at a job and he has his woman, he loves his woman, but at the job he works with women. He may enjoy being around the women. He enjoys the company of women because he enjoys that feminine energy, that feminine presence. It does not automatically mean he's going to cross certain lines, he's going to cheat. He just likes the presence of women. But what I'm saying to you is that though a lot of masculine men may enjoy the presence of women, the wise man, the mature man, understands the boundaries that need to still be in place to not risk losing his partner, to not disrespect her, to not cause problems at home. All right. And also, I would argue that though he may enjoy the presence of women, it's not the same as the man who constantly craves attention and validation from women, who's seeking to take it further because he doesn't just want to be in the presence or just enjoy the presence. He wants the attention. He wants the extra stuff. That's the guy who has a greater chance of crossing lines he should not cross. All right. That's the guy who can become too consumed with social media and how he may inappropriately behave on certain apps, because he wants more than just feminine energy. He wants validation. He wants, again, it's just more. And so it also can speak to a deeper insecurity in that man. And that's why he's always seeking it out, to make him feel better about himself. And so a man who has matured, a man who has become confident in who he is, he does not need it like that. Again, he may enjoy it, but it's not going to be to the extent where, again, it causes problems. So anyways, the point is you want to pay attention to how he is in this regard, because it can open the door to so many problems, and he needs to get that in check before you two can have a successful relationship together. So before this video ends, I need to say this, all right? As I said earlier, immature man does not equal bad man. And though many may disagree with what I'm about to say, immature man doesn't necessarily mean wrong man. It just may mean it's not time to be with this man, all right? I have coached many people where when they met, there wasn't a level of maturity to have a successful relationship yet. They had a connection, but they still, people have to learn how to manage their emotions. And especially when we find someone that we fall deeply for, sometimes that's when our emotions get the best of us. Sometimes that's when we find ourselves the least stable emotionally, because this person pulls out of us things that no one else does. And so we need more growth in life before we can successfully join together with them in a relationship, and even more so into a marriage. And so, as I mentioned in another video about right guy, wrong time, yes, sometimes it's just about, all right, listen, we can't do this now because the ingredients now in place will cause more harm than good in the long run. And if we recognize that it's just not time, it doesn't mean we have to put our life on hold and wait. We go live our lives. We go continue to evolve and become the best versions of ourselves. But we understand that, all right, if this comes back around and we're still feeling that connection and things have now improved and we're available for each other, then there's no reason why that door should be shut. And so it's important that we just don't write people off because of immaturity. Understand that there's a difference between immaturity and just the wrong person or the wrong fit, or someone who is just blatantly not good for you. All right. And again, to just help you understand it a little bit better, look at it this way. The person that you have a connection with, but the maturity is not there yet, and I would argue that there's still some things in you that need to evolve, is a matter of when you guys are together, it feels amazing, everything's great. But you may struggle to handle certain situations because you lack the growth, the wisdom on how to better navigate through these things. All right. That's just one small example of how you can have it. You can have this dynamic. Whereas the person who's just not good for you, it's not amazing. It's not peace elsewhere. There's always some nonsense with them. It might be some good moments, but it's no, you guys just clash overall. It's just not a good fit. End of story. So anyway, I'm not going to drag on this point. I just had to make sure you heard it, because I think too many people close the door on situations that still have a potential for something coming around in the future that could be amazing for them. Hey, thank you for watching this video. Be sure to check this one out right here, and I'll see you there. So let me start right off by saying thank you for clicking on this video. And I say thank you because I know and I understand that for a lot of women, the whole topic of being a man's piece pisses some people.